clarification of,
So,
et cetera.
so
Those
folks
are
are
my
out there
thoughts, at
looking
least.
at it.
I
It's
will say on the walk
1.75%
around on
of that
April 11th, the
40,220,000.
developer was there.
And please stop me if you have
Um,
questions. I know you've seen this
his
before, but I just want to make
company
sure.
is SLV Ashland
So
LLC,
this
which I'm
chart's a
sure
little
was created
different than what you
for
saw in the
this
budget workshop
specific
because I wanted
project.
to make it a little
His
clearer
name
for
is
folks
Jeffrey
in terms
Engler
of
from
what are we
Needham.
asking for and how
Apparently has
are we going from that forty
experience with
million two hundred eleven
Section
thousand number
40B
to forty-two
or
million one
Chapter
hundred forty-two
40B
thousand. So this
projects.
here hopefully will
And in
outline
his
it a little more
presentation, he did
clearly for
mention
folks.
that
Um, so I will have a
the
couple people jump
drawings
in.
and
Brittany, I see
whatnot
you
that have been
online.
filed now
Kelly's here as well
um,
to talk a little bit about
most likely will
the new
change over
programs that we're looking to
time
create.
as
But I
he
think it's
works
important
with
to
the
highlight a few things first.
community
One,
to
if
try
you go
and
down to
reach
increase
an
of personnel
agreement
due to
on
ESSER
a
grant fund laws,
proposal.
we've
The
all heard of the
proposal
fiscal
is for
cliff coming from all the federal
250
and state aids that came
apartments,
through the COVID time period. We have about
25% of which would be
671,735
affordable.
of
Having said all of that,
salaries
is
that are
the
attributed
sort of
and
the
have been
process
attributed
I
to
set up
the ESSER money.
satisfactory for
So this
everybody?
year that money runs out. You can see the folks who are being paid out of that
Okay.
671,000.
Makes sense to me.
Counselors,
Sorry.
Good. Okay.
as well as our middle school
Sorry
half
about
team
that.
that we created
Some of the things that I was
as enrollment was increasing.
perhaps concerned
So
about and
those are
thought we would
positions
certainly
that we
like the
want to keep,
developer
but now we have to
to
account for
address in
them
more
in the
detail
operating budget.
was traffic. I mean, the project goes
Britton, are
from
you
Concord
available right
Street
now?
around Main Street into Myrtle
Yes.
Awesome,
Street.
thank you. Do you want to talk about the
Part of it is sunken below the ground, below the street level, so it needs to be how high it's going to be. They're showing 5-story buildings. When the land is sort of sunken, it's difficult to tell exactly how high the project is going to be. The other thing that I don't have a lot of information on, and the land encompasses part of the Nyanza plume. Most of us, I'm sure, or probably all of us, are familiar with the problem that Nyanza had created. And going back years ago, the EPA has been actively involved and continues to be in creating a plume to prevent bad chemicals to come up into the surface and the air and exposure. The EPA, I think, is going to be actively involved in this project to make sure that the plume is not disturbed. But I, for one, would like to see that addressed by the developer. As part of the application that they filed with the Mass Housing, in a 40B project, they can request waivers from active zoning bylaws in the town of Ashland. And their initial filing is they've requested 25 waivers, which is part of the submission that the documents that we got. Some of them are rather nondescript, but others, such as height, are of significance. Okay, I've done enough talking. And I thought the other thing is we've got till May 29th. I'm not aware that we have any scheduled meetings after tonight before then. And I really wouldn't want to have a meeting just to come back and approve a document to submit to the town manager, who's going to compile the various thoughts of all the boards and then submit it in one package to the town, to Mass Housing. My thought is that we identify areas that each of us have some concerns about. Then perhaps that can be compiled by Peter or Alvaro, submitted to us for any revision, and then send it along. I don't think we need a formal vote, do we, Peter?
No, you do not need a formal vote
Okay.
to approve any letter. It's just, at this point, just to jump on, just to kind of add on. So Mass Housing is the review entity, and we are Ashland, the town of Ashland's within our We do typically, these projects have a 30-day time period to review and add comments. Because of town meeting and we are trying to, we have put forth MBTA zoning on our town meeting warrant. Mass Housing granted us a 30-day extension, so we do have a little bit more time than normal. And yeah, no, it's not a decision, it's just really comments that you would like to see the applicant addressing, and as John stated. But from a formality standpoint, no, it's nothing that you have to approve from a letter. It's just a
Okay.
matter of reviewing and submitting that to the town meeting.
And I would note it in one of the town managers' weekly email messages that he sent out, or newsletters. He invited comments from town residents to be submitted, and there's apparently a link to click on it, and so individual town residents can also submit concerns, and we don't. So by not allowing the public to talk at our meeting tonight on this subject, they're not being prohibited from rendering their opinions and making them known. Well, I don't know, who wants to go first with any thoughts again about areas of interest that we're interested in, would like addressed? Stu, how about you?
All right, Stu.
Well, I would like a point of information. How many current businesses or occupants will be affected by this project? In other words,
That I
I think there's some professional people occupying the building that they're talking about.
There are a number of businesses that operate out of the buildings and use the parking lot as well. What the number is, I don't know.
Peter, do you know that number? Tenants that use it?
You know what, to nail it down, no, I don't have a full number, I'm gonna guess it's in the maybe 3 dozen range, 2 to 3 dozen range.
In the what? What range?
I'd say probably between 24 and 36 businesses.
Oh, okay.
So-
Gotcha.
That could be a considerable loss to the town.
Yeah, I read one on, I follow Facebook way too much, but I read in one of those that there were 75 tenants. I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but that's a lot of businesses to be displaced as well.
Yeah,
Not that 36 is.
I would have to look further into that. I think, I would have to look further into that and ask the applicant for that information. I think I can try to pull that together and try to nail that down. Yeah, but
Good question, Stu.
I've walked that building, I've walked in and out and throughout that building multiple times. With confidence, Brian, I can tell you that 75 is high.
Okay.
And I would be more comfortable with saying I would say most likely between 30 and 40. That's what my estimate would be.
Okay.
In our walk around, most of them seem to be fairly small operations, at least from my observation.
Yeah, I think there's varying levels of traffic for each of them as well. Obviously, Uppercuts being the boxing gym, which I'm in quite frequently, is very, very busy. There's a dentist that's also busy, and then a church that is busy over the weekends in there as well. But the others are somewhat professional offices that, might have 1 or 2 people working in the office. Maybe some of them are working remote, and then in there for meetings, that type of thing. From what I've seen in there, but definitely would be some disruption.
Okay. Anything else, Stu?
No, Mr. Chairman, not at this time.
Okay. Brian, how about you?
I'm really concerned about the density um, in that spot in downtown. 250 apartments means more than that in people, and the people are going to have cars. And you can't get through downtown now, at peak hours. I mean, it's okay, but you add 250 right there, it's just going to be ridiculous. I don't see how that works. Uh, that's one of
I
my
think
main concerns.
the proposal was for, I think they were planning 1.5 cars per apartment, I think, if memory serves me correct, which would make about 375 uh, cars theoretically.
Yeah, I think
Obviously,
I think it's 390 in the application.
okay.
Yeah.
And obviously the entering out onto either Myrtle Street or Main Street, you've got a traffic light right there at Pleasant Street. And I can see traffic in the morning coming out of the apartment complex trying to get on to Main Street, being blocked by the traffic light, could be creating problems. So I think they do have to very much want to see a traffic study addressing these issues and how it can be how it's going to function because it
I've
is
seen
extremely
cars
dense.
backed halfway up Pleasant Street,
Yeah.
when the trains come through. So you add
Mhm.
another, uh, I'm using the number 250, but you add that much density to that corner and those people trying to get in as well. I'm assuming that the traffic light would be, you go and then the other side goes and then, a four-way stop kind of thing, like most of them are today. And it's just going to be forever to get through there. It just, and, parking is a concern. It still doesn't seem right, even if it's 390. Yeah. The height, I think, it's kind of a quaint little downtown. I mean, to have that one new building on the corner that's bigger than I would have liked to have seen it. But 5 stories is, it's 30 feet off the road. That's huge. I mean, it's not a quaint downtown anymore when you do that, in my opinion.
Hear you. Nathan, thoughts?
So you and Brian hit on some of my main concerns. Certainly the traffic with, nearly 400 cars being added to what is already a pretty narrow and heavily trafficked street. Linked to that, I'd like to see just a general estimate on how many residents they think there are going to be there. I'm concerned about strains on water supply, sewer systems, the infrastructure of the town. And then just other thoughts I jotted down in no particular order. I think losing one of those granite buildings is a significant historic loss to the town. I'd like to see if there's any way the developer can protect all three of the granite buildings. The plans, as I see them now, I think are a missed opportunity to make some of that riverfront area more accessible to the public. If there was a way to incorporate, a public walkway or something along the Sudbury River coming off of the mill pond there. Yeah, going back to the height of the building, I looked. 128 Main is 4 stories, and that feels big and out of scope with the rest of the downtown. So you think of something, another story on top of that, it really is kind of a jarring visual as you roll into downtown Ashland. And then just generally, I'd like to hear more about their plans for the commercial piece of the development. What do they envision going in there? Is there a plan to prioritize some of the existing businesses as tenants for the new commercial space? If it's going to be something like a restaurant, how do they envision handling parking for restaurant patrons? Is that going to be part of the 390 spaces, or is there additional parking for a restaurant on top of that?
Yeah, good questions, Nathan.
Yeah. Anything else, Nathan? Good points.
That's it for now.
Excellent. Ryan, how about you?
Well, beside the traffic study, which I think is obviously a very key piece of information, I did not see in the plans any elevation, so that would speak to, you know, how far and how high it's going to be towering over Pleasant Street. Given the current grading, it is possible that it might only be really three stories facing on Pleasant. I can't really tell from the plans, so I think obviously further refinement of that is very important. I think all the other ideas of other things to incorporate, such as a walkway along the river and everything else, are also excellent ideas.
One of the plans they handed out some plans at the walk around on April 11th, and most of them were um, similar to what had been sent to Michael, but there was one entitled Street Elevation, but frankly, it doesn't really show anything by way of feet. And it appears that that there's no lowering into, so I'm not sure what what they're going to do. But I think obviously we need something clarified on that. There was one other thing I forgot to mention, but that I wanted to get some clarification from the developer on. And it's contained in the comprehensive permit site approval application rental package for mass housing. And it's on page 19 of 21. And there's a list of questions, and the developer has to answer them yes or no. And there's like 8 or 9 questions, and they're all answered no, except one. And the one that's answered yes is, have any of the applicant entities failed to carry out obligations in connection with a comprehensive permit issued pursuant to MGL Chapter 40B and any regulations or guidelines promulgated thereunder? Parenthesis, whether or not mass housing is or was the subsidizing agency slash project administrator, close parenthesis, including but not limited to completion of a cost examination and return of any excess profits or distributions. And I think we would like to know what exactly they failed to do, uh, which could be of importance to us in ultimately deciding certain issues, I think.
You know, when you say that they submitted 25 waivers, that means 25 of our rules they don't want to follow. And that, I don't even know which ones they are, but that's just concerning on its face. I mean, we don't make these rules for the heck of it, that they have a purpose. And they don't like 25 of them off the bat. That's just pretty scary to me.
Well, I don't remember when we did handle the 40B project for the Valentine Estate, they also sought a number of waivers. Um,
Yeah, I don't remember it exactly. I was there for that, but
yeah,
none
I
of
mean,
them were favorable
some of the
things.
requests are, um, well, it was attached to to the application. Uh, and one of the waivers, for instance, is a waiver requested from design plan review and all applicable design plan review requirements under this section, because under 40B, the Zoning Board of Appeals acts as the design review, the design plan review agency. Uh, we can certainly ask for help from the design review committee or board, but under 40B, the authority lies with the ZBA and not with the design review and planning board, which our zoning laws provide. So there are also requests to waive the height limitations, et cetera, which are certainly more significant, and number of waiver requests. I guess that's sort of what I expect with any 40B project proposed, is that there are a number of requests to waive requirements. That's part of the whole process, I guess. But I don't know, we can cross those individual bridges if, as, and when there's the hearing, as an application filed and the hearing gets opened.
But I remember on the last one, they didn't want to give adequate space, to put snow when it does snow. Granted, we don't get a lot of snow these years, but the years that we do, what do you do with it? You can't make space to put.
I mean, those
stuff.
are all things that are going to have to be considered.
One of the
Especially
biggest
on the banks of
concerns.
the river.
Yeah.
One of the big concerns too is, looking at some of the foundation requirements. It has to go so deep in order to support a 4 or 5 story tall building that you're into the plume, no matter what you do. You have to go down far enough to get the bedrock to put these things in. And when you do that, you're going to be disturbing where the plume is living now. And once you do that, you can't just undo it. It's not like opening a jar and closing a jar. It's really,
I mean, it's certainly a concern.
concerning.
Peter, are the plume issues going to be handled by the EPA as opposed to us?
You're muted.
You're muted.
So yeah, the plume issues, well, going back a little bit, I do want to just state that this project was in front of the planning board for about a year. The applicant had a LSP, a licensed site professional on their staff, on their team. And he has remained on their team, and he is working, and he has worked with and will continue to work with EPA and DP regarding the issues, which include the plume matter, and then also any well issues, PCE issues on the site. And right now also there's a land restriction on the site, or use limitation restriction on the site, which is actually held by DEP. And it's up to the applicant to have that removed. And so EP and EPA are part of this review. I can't stress that enough. And this project is on their radar. And it's been on their radar for the last 2 years. And recently, within the last 2 weeks, I've met with DEP and EPA on this project. And so they are part of the review process.
Okay.
And
Well,
can
obviously,
you elaborate on the meeting with EPA and DEP?
In what area, in what context?
Well, I mean, are they working for mass housing or the developer or for residents of Ashland?
They're working for residents of Ashland. Yeah. They're not working for and so, they do have concerns about this site, right? And so they're going to have to, anything that stays in place, they're going to have to put vapor mitigation down. And the applicant is putting together a remediation plan. It's called a RAM plan. It's a remediation plan, right? For this site. And so they are working for the residents of Ashland as a professionals, obviously within their respective state agencies and federal agencies, to review this project. And so the applicant has worked with applicant's licensed site professional, has had conversations and has worked. And with the planning board process, I can tell you that I've set up meetings with DEP and EPA and the applicant, and kind of sat on meetings, when they talked about this stuff. And so I'm not a technical expert on all the environmental matters, obviously. But I feel confident that EPA and DEP know of this project, right? It's on their radar and they're looking at everything from it. And you should feel confident as a board that I'm helping kind of administer those conversations.
I mean, it
Between-
just strikes me that all these environmental concerns, which are very, very serious, make this site inappropriate for this type of development.
Peter,
And that's one of the things mass housing has to determine, whether this is an appropriate site for this development.
Correct.
So,
so
you know, I've
Peter,
got,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
When the original plume was capped, who
Mhm.
oversaw that work? Who was the state agency that thought it was a good idea to just cap it and not mitigate it? Was that
I,
EPA?
to my
DEP?
knowledge, it was EPA. To
So
my
that-
knowledge, it was EPA that EPA came in and took over the site once it was hit a certain mark, obviously. Um, when that was, I think it was the early 90s, you know. Stu, you're nodding your head. I think was that the time period, the early 90s. And I know it rolls up the level to the federal EPA very quickly. It's a super fun site. And it's a serious, obviously, site. And, you know, we have the regional director who is here on the ground, you know, and she oversees the continued mitigation of the plume, right? Now, I think there's two things, Brian. There's the cap, right? And then there's the plume. The plume is in the groundwater. The cap is obviously kind of itself on the hill. And so the
Yeah.
plume is what the plume covers pretty much from the cap running down Pleasant Street, right across the railroad tracks, down Pleasant Street, and then kind of in through it out to downtown. And it's kind of, you know, Town Hall, I think, is right on the edge of the plume. And it's between Town Hall and the tip of Pleasant Street, maybe a little bit further. I think that the 21 Main Street is also within the plume.
But it just keeps moving down the street that way, right?
Well, from what I understand, that the plume is very, it's in the water, it gets into the water, right? But the plume is not growing, but it's stagnant, right? And it is, but it hasn't grown in the recent years. And there's continued monitoring of the plume. You know?
Yeah, it's for me, it's still very concerning that, you know, it was in one spot. 20, 30 years later, it's all the way down the street. Where is it going to be in another 20, 30? And how is that going to affect the 250 people that now live above it if this all gets approved? To me, it just seems like a really bad idea to build something over what we already know is a problem. You know, I want to hear more about it. My mind's not made up or anything, but my initial response to these type of things is, boy, this is really concerning to me. But I'm willing to be shown data or pictures or something that make it seem safe. I'd love to see that.
Is the RAM plan done or are they still working through it?
They're working through it. They're
Yeah.
working through it.
And
Yeah,
that's gonna be the big tell-all is what, you know, what the RAM says and
Correct.
where they're at, but
And there's much more, there's many more balls to go back and forth, right, with DEP, with EPA, with the application team regarding that RAM, right? And, you know, EPA and DEP are not going to sign off on anything until they feel comfortable that at a satisfactory level, that their RAM plan, their remediation process is, you know, is sufficient. You know, so. That's what I can talk about. That's what I can that's kind of elaborating on the process.
Okay. Anybody have any other issue that they want to put in our memorandum, as it were, to be submitted to Michael? And I think we've raised some pretty good points, but
I do, I think it was, Nathan was talking about, some of the stress on town services, water and sewer, but there's schools and fire, police, DPW, and all the other things that another 250 homes or apartments in town, affect. All that stuff gets affected. And from what I've seen, I don't think it ever actually gets incorporated into the plan. They stay on the site and they build the box and they say, we got almost enough parking for everyone, but they don't really, from what I've seen, calculate it out to room and school and emergency services and all of that. So from what I've seen going on,
I don't, unfortunately, I don't
concerning.
think those are issues that we can really consider in whether or not to allow or to deny a 40B project. But I could be wrong on that, but I don't think so.
I think it's just things that we need to, maybe not the ZBA, but the town needs to think of when you bring another
I would
giant thing
agree.
in.
Well, at the moment, it's not a project that the town has negotiated with and reached an agreement on something. It's a proposal that has not even reached the town level yet. And we will see what mass housing does. And there will be opportunity for the town and the developer, if it's allowed to go forward, to have further conversations about the project.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, you Stu.
let's go through a hypothetical. We have a 40B sitting on Independence Drive that's, I guess, still held up in court. Let's say that breaks loose from the court, and then we still consider this project. So when Nathan talks about the infrastructure and the water supply and sewage, etc., that situation is going to be really exacerbated by the coming together or the confluence of maybe two 40B projects being done at I'll call it relatively the same time. So that's another consideration that we have to think about too.
So Stu, I can speak to that. The effluent of the UGC, so it's actually off of Memorial Drive. The Memorial Drive, this board in 2021 issued a comprehensive permit for United Group of Companies, which is going to be 180 unit age restricted development. That development, the flow of sewage was already accounted for within the system.
Okay.
And that was done back when the MBTA, actually when the RTD district, transit oriented district, was permitted and the MBTA access was built. And that was all done with the insight of housing was going to be on that roadway. And the town did build in the numbers of units. And so those units are already added with already accounted for, I would say, within our system flow. Does that help understand the question, or at least shed some light on it? Okay.
I mean, there's no question that if it goes forward, will have a major impact on the town and the town services.
Yeah.
I know the breakdown of the proposed apartments. I don't have it immediately in front of me, but they provided it. A number of them are studio and one-bedroom apartments. which presumably would not present many children residing in them, but there were also two and I think a few three-bedroom apartments, and that obviously would present another issue. And their proposed rents are, to be determined. But 25% of them will be affordable and may well present additional school children. Peter, anything else anybody has that wants to be included in the thought? If not, Peter, do you have enough to sort of put a memo together?
Yeah, I have enough to put a memo together. And I also-
Concerns and what we'd like to see addressed?
Yeah, and I'll say I've had many conversations about this already with different players and committee and groups, and I'm gonna tell you right now, your comments are shared by many, right? And I'll put together a letter and I'll send it out to John and obviously the rest of you, and then we can kind of get that taken care of. So, and if you guys have any,
Will we have a chance to add or subtract from
Of course.
what you're putting? Super.
yeah,
All
I'm
right.
just gonna go
Great.
draft. I'll put a draft together and I put it in some bullet points, and then if you guys want to go ahead and add more info or more thoughts, I'll take the first volley and then you guys can kind of add in from there. And then also, obviously, if anybody has any questions, concerns about the application and or about the 40B process, please let me know and I'll try to obviously find the answer for you as soon as possible.
Excellent. Okay, thank you,
Great.
Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay,
You got it.
moving on to the next item on the agenda, which was approval of meeting minutes for our last meeting on April 9th. Alvaro had sent out a draft set of minutes. I had sent a number of proposed changes to him, and I automatically see one of which I missed, which was that the minutes were for 2024 and not 2023. Peter, Alvaro said he made some revisions that I had suggested, but if he sent them out to people, I didn't get them, so I don't quite know what we're voting on.
So I think
what the
he
exact,
added, I think he added them in, and I can tell you that,
Did anybody else have any questions or proposed changes in the minutes?
Nope.
I can,
Okay.
I have the minutes but I don't know if they're highlighted like the decision. So,
I can just briefly say the minutes. Obviously, it should be April 9th, 2024 and not 2023. On line 46, the word located, and it should be just locate
oh, I got it.
right there.
Yeah.
And there was some confusion about what votes were taken when, and it looks like Alvaro corrected them and clarified them at least.
So will the yellow your changes, John?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
The original draft of the minutes had sort of misconstrued one of the motions about closing the hearing, and we couldn't really close the hearing before we had a discussion. So it looks like the changes, which weren't major, were all made. Any additional changes other than that one after 67? Doesn't look like it. Okay. And again, so with the additional change of 2023 to 2024, Any questions or proposals? If not, somebody want to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, Nathan. I, John Trefethan, vote in favor.
Aye, Brian Forrestall, vote in favor.
I, Nathan Band, vote in favor.
I, Stuart Siegel, vote in favor.
I, Ryan Sullivan, vote in favor.
Excellent. Okay, that concludes that. Item number 5, staff updates and administrative matters. Anything to report on that, Peter?
I think the biggest thing, obviously, is we talked about is 10 to 60 Main Street.
Right,
Um,
but no applications pending or anything?
yeah, at this point, we have no more applications coming in front of the zoning board, I believe. And so I think that's all I really have for the meeting.
Okay, very good. Then I guess we can close the meeting and need a motion for that, don't we?
Correct.
I move we
Okay,
adjourn.
someone wish to make a thank you, Brian. In a second?
I
Anybody
second.
wish to? Okay. I, John Trefethan, vote in favor.
Aye, Brian Forrestall, vote in favor.
I, Nathan Band, vote in favor.
I, Stuart Siegel, vote in favor.
I, Ryan Sullivan, vote in favor.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, WACA, and good night, everybody.
Have a great
Good
night,
night,
everybody.
thanks.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Thank you, Peter.
You got it. Go Bruins Celtics.
Yes.
And Patriots.